Welcome to Applied Innovation.
Hi, and welcome to Go Live from Capgemini Applied Innovation Exchange in San Francisco. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Andreas, and I manage the Applied Innovation Exchange team, and I will be your host today. First, we hope you're all in a safe environment. As you know, these are unprecedented times, and safety is, of course, our #1 priority. And it's never been so important for us to ensure strong social connections with colleagues, with clients, and with business partners. So I'm sure many of you are joining from home today, and I'm happy you do. This session is being recorded and we will post it online. And I also want to say that because it's a live session with panelists, any potential comments or views expressed regarding COVID-19 and the pandemic is not official Capgemini comments. I encourage you all to engage with us in the Q&A section in the user interface, and we'll get to the questions and answers during the conversation and of course toward the end. So that said, the theme is rising to the challenge, thriving on data. To set a context, today hundreds of millions work from home. One aspect of working from home is what happens with productivity and revenue generation. Now, we are all aware of the severe impact that the pandemic has, and that your own safety or your family safety is, as I said, the #1 priority. We will be able to maintain focus on that, and at the same time explore what we can do smarter and faster, protecting and growing the businesses that eventually will be the engines that pull society into recovery. So we invited People.ai here as a company that understands both employee productivity and effectiveness, especially when it comes to sales, marketing, and customer service. Oleg Rogynskyy is the CEO and founder of People.ai, an AI platform that drives intelligence and optimization across revenue creation activities. Welcome, Oleg.
Hi, thanks for having me here.
Yes, you are welcome. Great to have you. I also welcome Ron Tolido, Executive Vice President and CTO at Capgemini Insights and Data, who joins us from The Hague in the Netherlands. Ron is the lead author of Capgemini's Technovision Trend Series and engages with global clients, speaks and writes about technology-driven business, innovation, and AI. Welcome, Ron.
Thanks, Andreas. It's already the end of the day over here, but I couldn't find a better way to end that day. So really happy to be here.
Good, good. So get right to the question. In the last episode of Go Live, we discussed many encouraging examples on what companies and organizations are doing today and to prepare for recovery and post-recovery times. Ron, my first question is for you. What is the role of data in how organizations address opportunities and really tough challenges?
It's a great question, and obviously, as we're all starting to do our work much more virtually with computers and the network underneath, it's obvious that we rely a lot on data as well. It's no longer just in real life that we can gather information, but it's all being captured, it's being stored, what we're doing in real time, and I believe the role of data, for example, in understanding the big changes we're currently seeing in customer preferences and customer behavior. For example, if we're moving our business to online channels is a crucial one. There's a supply chain which is quite uncertain in its setup, and who, which players might fall out in that supply chain, how they're still working, what you need to scale up. You need a lot of real-time information to deal with that. There's people working at home, and we're collecting data about that. How satisfied are they with that? How effective are they with that? And then obviously, we all know already from many, many years the role of data and understanding how to be more cost effective. So,
Right.
so I think there's whatever dimension you look at from this pandemic crisis perspective, you find that the role of data is indispensable.
Right. Yeah. Oleg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, with this brave new world that we are in right now, with work from home, with COVID-19, with economic uncertainty that comes with that, we are facing a lot of uncertainties. And myself as a CEO, that's my job right now, is to look through my business and identify what are the new areas of uncertainty I have to deal with and adjust for. We don't know how long this is going to last for, but what we know for sure is that the world is going to be much more digital and much less analog when this is over. And so as CEOs are dealing with a lot of uncertainty, the best way to reduce that uncertainty and to improve predictability is to use the data to make agile decisions. And so one such area of uncertainty that all CEOs are thinking about today is employee productivity in this brave new world. I just sent all of my employees back to work from home. Are they gonna be more productive, less productive, same? How is it gonna impact my customer positioning? Are my customers gonna cancel? Are they gonna be more likely to stay with the company? All these questions need to be answered for CEOs to reduce the productivity, to reduce the uncertainty. And I'm just gonna use an example. Activity data, the data about activity of your employees is a way to reduce this uncertainty in the areas of employee productivity and customer engagement. It's critical to agility. It's critical for people to, for CEOs to be able to see if employees are continuing the way it is, if the revenue profile is going to stay the same. So my advice and my kind of positioning here is that in every area of uncertainty where employees are, where CEOs are focused right now, they need to be looking into adding additional data types to the data they're looking at for the reports, for the analytics, to reduce the uncertainty. And it could be an opportunity to grow versus an opportunity for kind of tracking back or yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I fully agree. It seems like two critical aspects seem to be the importance of turning data into assets and the importance of applying real-time analytics, maybe enabled by new AI platforms to increase what we call corporate IQ. So let's deep dive into that aspect of thriving on data. Ron, what does that mean?
Well, let me share a few slides with the audience, if you don't mind, Andreas. I promise not to bombard, but just a few slides that might be interesting. Let me share my screen. The whole concept of thriving on data comes from something that we call Technovision. Within Capgemini, we have a yearly trend series that we publish, as you already mentioned. I'm one of the authors of it already for quite a few years now. Can still even remember 2009 when we created a special edition of our trends analysis that was fully dedicated to dealing with the financial crisis that we found ourselves within at that time. And we recently published, in January, we published our Technovision 2020 edition, which you, by the way, can find on the URL, capgemini.com/Technovision. And within Technovision, you see a whole series of what we call trend containers. So there are trends there about infrastructure, about applications, about data, yes, and we'll dive deeper into that. It's about process technologies, it's about user experience, it's about collaboration technologies, very much right now, of course, to the point. And there's a series of what we call design principles, designed for digital, which is much more about behavior and culture almost. It's more about the how instead of the what. Now that's a framework that we use to challenge all sorts of different business objectives and business problems. Two of them we've outlined in the 2020 edition. It was at that time based on what we thought would be crucial topics in 2020. Mind you, you released this early January. And one of the two topics was about simplification. How can we use technology to simplify a very complex world? And also, how can we apply technology in a more simple way? And the second one was all about what we call architects of positive futures. So how can you use technology to be more responsible, to battle climate change, to ensure digital inclusion and diversity, to deal with the societal impact of technology? So we thought these two were key themes. And then, of course, the pandemic arrived as a true black swan. And that's the main theme right now, is if we look at technology. I will shamelessly plug myself here. If you care to look me up at LinkedIn, I just post a perspective on using technovision as a framework, looking at the pandemic and see how all of these different technologies pertain and can be applied to use in the pandemic crisis, whether you're trying to survive, whether you're trying to virtualize your business and do it remotely, a few digital channels, or even if you're already reimagining what your business might look like after the, if we rise from the ashes. All of that is in this perspective. But one particular area, of course, which is interesting is how to thrive on data. Within thriving on data, if you would look up the document, you would see 5 key trends, and I've selected 4 just to go through in a few minutes to highlight what we mean with how to thrive on data, even in this very uncertain black hawk era, black swan era of the pandemic. So therefore, the way I see it, there are 4 important things to look at when you want to thrive on data. First of all, there's a trend which we call the crazy data train. And this is all about finding data to train yourself, to create your algorithms. In essence, it's about treating data as an asset. And if we all realize, as we just discussed, data is so crucial to deal with all the challenges in the current crisis. If that is such a corporate asset, even more than ever, you need to understand where it comes from. You need to really have the perspective of procurement to really understand where to get the data from and what are the crucial sources. But you also need to have an almost R&D vision on data in terms of how to leverage it and use it for the purposes that you're looking for. You could even envision some sort of a corporate balance sheet. It's no longer just financial data. If that is the key asset for the organization, why not envision some sort of a balance sheet that puts the data, including its sources, including the way it's being owned, including the way it's being used and leveraged? Why don't you put that on the balance sheet as well? So that's the first important aspect of thriving on data. Second one, I want to
just stop there for 1 second, Ron.
Sure.
What do you think when it comes to that crazy data train? What's changed the most in light of the current situation? I mean, obviously, this was true before, and it seems like most of what you're saying is even truer today. But you said something along the lines of knowing from where the data comes from, or the fluidity or the dynamic aspect of rapidly changing data sets. Now, what kind of stands out in terms of what's different today than half a year ago, so to speak?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what I currently see happening, first of all, is that we realize that sometimes for the type of analysis we want to do, we realize that it takes quite a lot of time to build up your own data collections. It might take years before you have significant data. So there is very much right now also an off-the-shelf type of understanding in terms of I could get data off the shelf. I could get very crucial industry data that I currently need for my new purposes, and I could get them off the shelf rather than spending the next 2 years in trying to collect it all myself. And also we start to realize that a lot of data, particularly in an AI context, can also be simulated or synthetic. It actually could be generated through systems, and we could add a little bit water of ourselves on top of it in order to get the right richness of data as well. So there's a few things clearly happening over there. We realize we need different sources, particularly also in the light of AI. We need much more data in order to train properly. And these are a few of the, I would say, circumstances that really have changed, even in the past few months.
Right. Yeah, thank you. And now I think what you have here is the managing data in a federative way. What does that mean?
Well, yeah, also with that realization of data being a true asset and understanding where it all comes from, a lot of organizations start to realize that data is everywhere. And I don't only mean there's a lot of external sources that you cannot really manage as your single source of truth, but also within companies, we see that most organizations are quite complex. And we realize that if we want to bring data very near to the business in order to be effective, so important nowadays in this current business climate, we also need to understand that there is not one single source of truth that we can manage from one single point of storage. And you know, it would be great, but it's like a holy grail that's never meant to really be found. So the notion of federative data management, it can be anywhere, but I can use even AI to manage that data in a federated, distributed way, rather than trying to deny it and trying to centralize all of it in one unified framework. I think that's a very important realization. It's if you like, thriving on federation, rather than trying to deny it, you try to make the best out of it, and simply acknowledge the fact that data is very distributed, that there are different perspectives on data, and it's not really a solution to bring it all together and pretend it's the only source of truth, right? So that's I think very much an understanding that we see a lot of within a lot of organizations nowadays as well. And now even more when you find yourself in new supply chains, in new ways of collaborating with other organizations that you didn't anticipate, but now it's a crisis time, it's even more relevant, right? To understand that you need to manage data in a distributed, federative way. Now, the final two, before I violate my time slot too much, Andreas,
no worries.
I do think if you have all that data, and I'm sure Oleg will be able to dive a little bit deeper into it, of course, because he has an AI organization, we start to appreciate the raw power of the new generation of algorithms that you can create on top of all of that data, wherever you got it from, by the way, whatever way you manage it. But the power of, for example, deep learning and reinforcement learning, seeing patterns for predictions and prescriptions that we couldn't even tackle until now with proper data science and statistics and algorithms as we knew them, is a very powerful insight. So we start to be able to see insights, we start to be able to see patterns that we've never seen before. And that is, I think, the real breakthrough power, and all the enthusiasm we see around AI is really based on that. So we need to leave sometimes our ways a little bit in order to see these new patterns and then be really able to leverage them and be so much more accurate in our predictions, so more accurate in our understanding of the situation or understanding what needs to be done, thanks to these algorithms. So that's an important understanding, to see that as an asset as well. And then finally, what it takes to thrive on data, I believe, is to realize that you want to do the good thing with data, and you want to do it the good way. So with it, I mean is, if we have access to so much data, and there's a lot of personal data involved, I'm sure Oleg will be able to elaborate a little bit on that. There's a lot of online real-time behavior that we have in data. It involves people, it involves companies, it involves sentiments, it involves emotions, it involves ethics. So it's very important to understand how we properly deal with the quality of the data, the anonymity, if necessary, of the data, and that we do the right things also if we create this next generation of algorithms. And I think nobody would argue me if I would say that nowadays doing data for good, I'm using data in all sorts of different ways to battle this pandemic is arguably and without a doubt is the most important thing we currently have to challenge through data. So good times in terms of using data for good, it clearly has an entirely different dimension nowadays, and very different from even what we foresaw 2 months ago. So these are the 4 key points, Andreas, for thriving on data, the way I see it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Really interesting aspects of data connected to addressing opportunities and the tough challenges that many businesses are finding themselves in today. I think it was interesting you mentioning the aspect of ethics in AI. The 2 sources of good content there, as I found, is IEEE's ethically aligned design, which is kind of a paper on what we need to adhere to in terms of principles to ensure that new AI solutions implemented don't, in very short terms, harm human beings or harm individuals, or and also the Asilomars 23 principles are also a good source of guidance there. But what's your take, Oleg and Ron, in terms of ethics and AI? What's the link here?
Well, AI is only as good as the data you feed into it. And so it is vitally important to make sure that the data that goes into training your machine learning models is well balanced in terms of not being biased through any of the dimensions, be it race, gender, you name it. The balance of the data you're feeding to the machine is important. And what's interesting is we are starting to see more and more solutions in the market that use AI to find biases in the data before you train the machine learning models for other purposes. So I think this is something that we're going to have to spend a lot more calories on in the next couple of years, because I mean, AI machine learning sounds like it's been here forever for the past 5-10 years, but in reality, it's a blip on the timeline of human history. So once we got the first excitement through, now it's time to really operationalize it and make it something we can use for production grade human activities out there. And so that is really important to make sure we don't train the machine in a biased way.
Interesting. So Oleg, really curious to know and learn more about the People.ai platform. Can you walk us through what People.ai is?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to use, in this walkthrough, I'm going to use the overall theme of the conversation, which is how different data types help us get through the uncertainty times. And tying back to what Ron said earlier today, getting the data is one of the hardest things we are facing with today. You can spend 2 years collecting this data. You can sometimes simulate it if you can, or sometimes you can go out and buy the data, purchase it from outside sources. Now, there's one type of data we all have. We're all sitting on tons of it, yet we are not properly utilizing it. And that is human activity data or employee activity data. Because there is a pretty interesting dilemma there. You either have to today invest 30-40% of every employee's time collecting this data, because I'm using an example of a CRM, asking them to enter everything they do into a customer relationship management system, or you have to be okay with having 90% of this data being incomplete or missing, and 75% of this data being obsolete within a year, no longer relevant. And so this illustrates the challenge that Ron mentioned earlier today of how hard it is to get the right data sets that power your business today. And so what People.ai does, we basically solve a challenge that many of the business leaders have been facing for the past 20-30 years, for as long as CRM system exists. We're talking about the interplay between, for example, salespeople, any other go-to-market function, marketers, managers, executives, where you have a number of systems in between that are supposed to be connecting us and aligning us together, such as customer relationship management system, sales automation, marketing automation, etc. Now, the flaw, the single missing piece in this flow is that salespeople are supposed to be entering everything they do, everybody they meet, every action they take with every client into this CRM. Now, if we track back, we look at this problem, the incentives are not aligned there. Salespeople are paid to close deals and spend time with customers. They're not paid to spend time entering stuff into some kind of system so that your business is fed with fresh data. And because incentives aren't there, what is the reaction of salespeople? Let's just say, trust me, it's all there. What you have, what I've put in is everything I've done. And so your business is operating on majority of the true go-to-market data missing, so you can't train algorithms, you can't be predictive about it. It's difficult. And so what People.ai is in the same argument, in the same concept, we are the system that sits in between your salespeople, go-to-market employees, and the rest of the organization, that completely automates all of the capture of sales activity, sales contacts, customer activity, customer engagement, directly from salespeople, email, calendar, phone, etc., to feed this data into your systems, including the predictive and AI systems downstream, and make sure your business is fed with complete and comprehensive go-to-market data. How it works? We connect to salesperson's email, calendar, other activity systems, their Rolodex, etc. We automatically pull out all of that information into People AI, where we actually apply most of the modern algorithms in different functions in different ways, such as deep learning, convolutional deep learning, convolutional networks, etc., to identify where in your business these contacts are relevant to, these emails, these activities are relevant to reconstruct basically the behavioral path of how you close a deal. How do you service a customer? How do you make a customer successful? And then once all of that is reconstructed, the customers can consume, People AI customers can consume the data and the insights through the existing systems such as their CRM, other integrations with Slack, Zoom, Eloqua, you name it, through their BI systems and their data lakes, but also through People AI interface. Now, I want to bring it back to what we're all facing with today, because this activity data, as it turns out, is extremely powerful in combating the fallout of COVID-19. Most of the business leaders today are facing the questions like, I've sent my employees home. Is their productivity dropping when they're working from home? Or in some cases, are they even more productive? Like I can say that I haven't been on this many Zoom calls in my life in 24-hour period when I was working from the office. Not the fact that it's productive, but it's definitely more Zoom time for sure. Next question is, are the people today, when they're distracted by all the news and everything that's happening in the world, putting in the work to build the pipeline for future? Because you know what? If you don't build the pipeline today, your Q4, your end of this year is already a wash. How do we use activity data to detect disengaged customers? How do we see when customers go dark on us, when they ignore us, when they don't respond where they usually did? These could be early signals of potential customer churn, which you can act on today to prevent the churn. Now, how do you know who are top performers in the new reality? People are looking at the world very differently today. Some are scared, some are invigorated by the difficulties. How do you use activity data to identify who is really pushing it hard today? And how do you compensate those people? Because you know what? The deals, especially in sales, will not be closing for the next 6 months like they were last year. And if sales reps, 50% of their income is based on closing deals, and suddenly they're not making 50% of their income, guess what? If you don't find an alternative way to compensate them, they're gonna pack up their suitcases and go work for Zoom or Slack or someone who is going really well right now. So how do you figure out that alternative? How do you best manage your headcount changes? How do you preserve all the institutional knowledge that you've built up over the years if you're seeing turnover? That lives in activity data. And finally, when your field marketing is offline, which is all the conferences are canceled, the best thing you can do for field marketing is a webinar like this. How do you find additional sources of pipeline? Turns out they live in the relationships of all the people you have in your organization today. So to tie it all together, there is 3 simple steps every organization needs to take advantage of activity data. And it's not that hard. First, you got to capture it. So as Ron said, you got to acquire the data. Turns out that every company today is sitting on years and years of activity data, because your email is there, it goes back in time. Your calendar is there, it goes back a few years in time. You can actually start today and capture the data as if you've been collecting it for the past 5 years. At the same time, with email retention policies, we are losing that valuable data every day. We're not collecting it and not using it in our systems. And so load the data. Step 2 is instrument your business. Just giving people a CSV file is not going to do much. You got to figure out 2 things. What does good look like based on historical data? But also, how do you give your managers and employees an ability to consume the data in a very simple way. So you got to build out employee activity performance benchmarks and dashboards that they can easily access. And lastly, just giving people dashboards doesn't cut it. It's not going to be operationalized. This is where companies like Capgemini are spectacular at, where you come in and you operationalize these dashboards, but you also run a change management program to equip managers with the great coaching tools. You train managers how to use the data to make decisions in their day-to-day work and how to provide next best action recommendations to the employees. So I hope that was a good overview. Couple words about People AI. We are based in San Francisco, about $100 million in funding from top investors. 53 large public companies use the product today. A lot of patents, and Gartner and Forrester have all been recognizing us for a while now, albeit there is no magic quadrant for what we do yet. So
there you go. Thank you, Oleg. That was an interesting walkthrough. It sounds like what you're saying is that again, that which was really important 2 months ago or 3 months ago, half a year ago, is on an intensified scale. I mean, it's even more important, making sure that our employees across the organization are doing the right thing and focusing on the right tasks, engaging with customers as much as possible, rather than spending time on that which doesn't drive revenue, so to speak. And at the same time, not pull out like the foundation on which we stand on accurate data. It sounds like that's what kind of you want to address, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so from that perspective, the economic uncertainty we're looking at right now can actually be broken down into a very simple formula. Every company is dealing with one constant, which is how much money we have in the bank. We know what it is today. There's no uncertainty about that. What we don't know is how long this uncertainty with COVID-19 is going to last for, how deep the fall could be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, how do we reduce that uncertainty of how long will it last or how deep the impact is going to be on my business? And how do we make decisions today of making the money we have in the bank or the revenue we have coming in last throughout the crisis? And so that is what makes companies pull back. That is what makes companies not invest or even cut their costs in a more drastic ways. It's not knowing how long the money is going to last for. So having more confidence using activity data that your customers won't cancel and your employees are keeping on delivering what they've been delivering before, that your performance rates are not going to drop, is what will make companies pull back less and the economy fall down less.
Yeah. Ron, it seems like there is a good connection to the framing that you did in Thriving on Data with the crazy data train here and the treating data as an asset and also the good times or the AI aspect of all of this. What's your take on all of this?
It's fascinating to see, as Oleg said, much of that data is already there. Sometimes we don't realize that we could leverage it, and now there's the absolute necessity almost to leverage it. And there's a flip side to being forced to work much more virtually and remotely, because it will also generate, potentially much more data. I don't like to, I'm not necessarily this type of guy to say, there's all sorts of different great opportunities from this crisis. It's a bloody crisis. It's a bad thing to be in, and there's no way that we should look at it. Here's new opportunities arising from it. Having said that, we do realize we create much more data as a result, and we can leverage it. But it also touches, of course, on the ethical aspect of it. If we're monitoring and using activity data, sometimes we want to anonymize it because that's simply a given. You have stuff like GDPR and other, let's say, rules and regulations you need to sort of comply to. And that's good because, it puts you right on the spot in terms of understanding the nature of that data and the role of human beings in the analysis of that data. And it's an important discussion, right? We all understand that. We've all seen the discussions around using data also, for example, to battle the whole spread of the virus. You're using mobile phone data, for example, and everybody knows the example. And we all realize maybe in certain countries, with different ways of looking at the value of personal data, it would be very easy to do it. And you would get better of it, and you would be better able to contain the virus. And on the other hand, you might be sacrificing, let's say, personal data more than you would aim for. So there's a very interesting trade-off going on there, which we've always seen, right? We want to be data-driven, but we're all emotional human beings with a need for privacy as well. And how do we create that balance act is something that is so much more relevant now than ever before.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to add that in the beginning, when GDPR just came out, everybody thought that's the new evil and the new regulation and whatnot, especially in North America. But what GDPR brought to life is predictability and rules of engagement when it comes to managing personal data. And this personal information, as GDPR calls it, can now be businesses can be built in a predictable fashion without being afraid that something you're doing is not correct or not right or can be regulated, because GDPR has this set of common rules. And now with CCPA in California, CASL in Canada, I mean, it becomes a rolling thunder from that perspective, which enables companies to build larger and more transparent businesses.
And it's also a matter of more trust, right? It's also a matter of more trust. What I've seen personally already quite a few times is requests from our clients to work together with them in virtual ways, using all sorts of collaborative, tools like Zoom and Storms and many others and which require sharing of data in a very open and transparent way, but on the other hand, also very secure. And these companies may not even be used to opening up their assets like that. In this virtual, relatively open collaboration context. So it also puts them right on the spot in terms of understanding, is that data actually something we want to share? How can we share it? How can we ensure that it's actually, secure and that we do comply to rules and regulations? But it's sort of a necessity to deal with it, because then you can collaborate and co-create in a virtual environment without all of the, the well-known firewalls of on-premise work. So it's yet another, let's say, challenge. But also a requirement to be able to do this successfully in a virtual world.
Yeah. So if I can just frame one question, so the Applied Innovation Exchange Network inside of Capgemini, Ron and Oleg, that the San Francisco team were one of 15 teams from one of 15 locations around the world where we engage with clients on applying innovation. So, and I think today more than ever, that is extremely important, that we can together identify a challenge or an opportunity or a problem statement and then apply innovation to get things done, right? So when it comes to this context from your perspective, Ron and Oleg, what's your advice in applying this? What are the enablers and or barriers to actually getting things done here? Where do we start, or what should we do, so to speak, if we apply it?
Well, I'll start, I guess. First of all, the biggest enabler is realizing that, as Ron said, you may be sitting on the data you don't even know exists yet. So email, calendar, phone data is one of those examples. Every company sits on troves and troves of data that they could be using today to make themselves more efficient. Other enablers, I mean, from my selfish perspective, I guess, working with people who have in-depth client relationships and understand how large organizations work, like Capgemini, for example, enables these kind of technologies to be rolled out faster and deeper into client organizations, which definitely makes a huge difference in terms of rollout. A smaller company like us would never be able to service a Fortune 500 company to the full extent without help integrating and bringing the data to life and doing change management.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of barriers, we spoke about regulation, but also, as Ron has touched upon multiple times today, is making sure that you do not do any harm with bringing in the data and technologies that are modern. They're all new, and we all want to be on the cusp of innovation, but at the same time, we don't know what will happen. We don't want another Skynet to happen, kind of thing, you know?
Right. Yeah, Ron, what's your take, like enablers and barriers and applying innovation?
Well, there's clearly a Maslow pyramid type of thing involved over here, meaning that if we are to work together, co-creating in a more virtual innovation space, you know, an applied innovation exchange, but then in a virtual environment,
Right.
yes, the data needs to be secure. And it's a Maslow pyramid type of thing, because if we surrender there and wouldn't be able to secure it in the right way, everything else fails, right? So you have to build on top of that. But I think it can be done. You know, we're mature enough in this industry. We have the experience to set that up. Then secondly, of course, many of us have been reluctant, I think, in the past to learn how to actually use these tools. It's we're all very quickly becoming Zoom experts, right? Or Teams experts. We're starting to use brainstorming tools like Storms and Klaxoon and others. And we find actually that there's a lot there that we could have been using already in the past, but we prefer the physical. We prefer the physical environment, right? And as much, Andreas, I love all the ARE places, the physical locations, 425 Brennan Street, San Francisco, great place to be. But now, of course, we can't be there. And we find that forced towards these virtual tools, we can very quickly learn how to use them.
Yeah.
And understand much better the ins and outs of all of these tools. So that's good. We embrace them. And then finally, I have found already with multiple organizations asking us to brainstorm, sometimes for innovation purposes, but also, of course, to challenge the current pandemic situation, which we, asks for a lot of creativity as well. Sometimes companies actually find, hey, this is actually low barrier. This is an easy entry way because we don't need to get all the people together in a physical place. It doesn't involve traveling. These tools are pretty much advanced. Actually, it's quite easy and relatively compelling to get it done in a virtual way. So if you really think about it, it might even be, in a way, a more attractive and compelling way every now and then to do it virtually. Right. And it's an interesting lesson already currently seeing applied.
Yeah, that's interesting. So just a quick reminder to all of the attendees listening in, now is a really good time to submit your questions down below, and we'll have some time together with Ron and Oleg to address some of them. So Oleg, Ron said lessons learned. Can you share any insights as of lessons learned in implementing, getting started, and then kind of sustaining that advantage, so to speak?
Absolutely. I have a couple examples, which obviously, since my business is connected with activity data, they're related to activity data as a data type, but doesn't mean you couldn't do the same thing in other verticals. We've mentioned Zoom probably 20 times now on this webinar. Zoom is a customer of People AI, and they have a very interesting set of use cases they have been using with activity data. First and foremost, when this sudden spike of activity started at Zoom over the past few weeks, they started looking into how do you deploy your scarce resources internally, your sales, your support, etc., to maximize not only the revenue growth, but also the social impact of their product. And so you look at activity data and looking at where their effort is going, they were able to redistribute their effort to not only guarantee power their growth on the enterprise side, but also find capacity to service initiatives like K through 12 education through Zoom, which now powers a lot of schools in the United States and globally. Now, another company I wanted to bring up that is utilizing activity data in a novel way is New Relic, where they're looking at engagement of both salespeople as well as the customer into every deal they have in pipeline to identify today which deals are showing signs of potentially not tracking in the right direction, and thus readjust their forecast and and be more successful in their selling motion by concentrating resources where they need to be. So you can apply this data in pretty much anywhere, from hiring an employee to ramping them to looking at their success as they're going through and executing kind of what they're supposed to be doing, kind of leading indicators of their success, to benchmarking, promotions, and so on and so on. We see that happening all the time right now.
Interesting. So, Ron, one question coming in here, connecting to something I said regarding the fluidity of data changing quickly, the proficiency of acting in real time. So how can we set up our team to better act in real time, ? So the real time aspect of connecting data and turning that into action. What do you see there? Is it a business process maybe related question, or is it a data proficiency question? What's your take, the real time characteristics?
It's obviously, in a way, it's tempting to say it's a technology question, of course, but I would also safely could say that we're able to do it. So in terms of technology, we're able to supply real-time data nowadays. We can process huge amounts of streaming data if necessary. We can, analyze that, process it in real time, and make it available. So in terms of technology, I would say it's always a challenge, but we can do it, and it has been done before. And clearly, again, these are times in which we tend to accelerate these findings and learnings, and tend to dive deeper and with let's say more emphasis on these technologies. But in the end, of course, the very fact that you have data in real time available rather than once a month, 2 weeks too late, but instead have it available in real time is something that we've already seen pop up with AI. Being able to do your AI-based inference in real time, on the spot, while doing so, rather than waiting for your typical reports that come too late anyway, is also a cultural phenomenon, and is something that will change the way we conduct our business and the way we look at data. There is no daily close, maybe there is certainly not a monthly close. It might be happening all the time, and it's changing in real time, and that's very much a behavioral aspect as well.
Oleg, there is a question coming in from one of the attendees for you, and I think the framing is very interesting. I think from a technology versus human being perspective, obviously with automation and AI coming closer and closer, there are some ethical aspects to this. So the question is, quote, "Very interesting platform and product. How does your platform manage the people aspect of the salespeople not feeling surveillanced/micromanaged by providing overwatch on all their activities like this ? End quote. So I'm sure that's not the first time you heard the question. So what's your take on that? How do we make sure that we are inside of the ethical boundaries of what we want to do? At the same time, we want to accelerate and do things smarter, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. There's 3 aspects to this. I'll start with a couple anecdotes. When we use Google Maps or Uber, we are willingly telling Uber and Google where we are located right now at every given point in time. Yet we are contributing that data about our activity in our location, which is extremely sensitive, to the common cloud that then gives us back the benefit of getting somewhere faster, or pressing a button and a car shows up to pick you up and take you places. And so in terms of activity management for sales and marketing, one thing that is really important to go back to is the slide I started my presentation with, is where you have to trade quality of data, which you use to get insights from, for the productivity of employees. And so if we don't collect this data, we don't get the insights, we don't get the growth, and we don't empower employees to be their best selves when they come to work, and especially in sales when they make money. At the same time, telling them to spend 30% of their time, and let me tell you, 30% of someone's time is a day and a half a week of their time. Entering data into some kind of system is also not a solution. So there is a need to solve this problem in an ethical way. And that's where the technical aspects of it come to place. Because you need to be able to filter out the data that's relevant to someone's personal things, like booking a vacation or talking
Right.
to a doctor. You need to be able to filter out business sensitive things out of the data to make sure you don't necessarily capture something related to M&A transaction, for example. But you also then need to only extract the data that is related to a specific business process that is relevant to the person. So People AI only extracts activity and context related to a deal you're working on right now,
Right.
after filtering out any sensitive or personal data, and only doing for you what you were actually supposed to spend a day and a half, a week of your time doing manually.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And it's really a matter of seeing a proper balance between being, in a way, driven more than ever, being driven by data and analytics and AI and insights, and it's a very powerful thing. And on the other hand, understanding the role of the human in all of it. And so we've always said there's a balance between IQ and EQ, right? There's intelligence and there's emotions.
Yeah.
And if somebody has the urge to download something after this, because you want to spend your evening in a very relevant and useful way, I would point to one of the most successful research reports we published last year, the Capgemini Research Institute. Just Google Capgemini Research Institute, you quickly find their homepage. And there's a report about emotional intelligence that was received very, very well, because it showed that yes, we are much more effective if we're data driven. And if algorithms help us to be more predictive and understand what we should do and how to be more effective. And on the other hand, if we don't balance it with a better understanding of, of what drives people in an emotional context, so having empathy for that as well, and develop our skills all through the organization, not only with leadership, it still doesn't work, right? So that's the perfect antidote, I would almost say, for some of the fears of people that they might be completely driven by data and algorithms. Right. But it also will incite us to develop our emotional skills as well.
Yeah, and then I think also that a really important part of this discussion is the importance of a contract, so to speak, between the individual user or employee and the organization, in terms of the data, what I control as a user, as an individual, I control this, and also to what extent the algorithms are transparent. So algorithm transparency is also really important. So this whole notion of establishing a contract and everyone knows what is happening, that is, I think, is a really important element of all of this. One question came in from Hugo, asking, quote, this is good, do we begin by looking at the data or building use case? Or do we build use case and try to find the data? So looking at data, build use case, or build use case and try to find the data. That's kind of, where do we, is it both?
What do you think? What do you think? Both, of course. I actually wrote a little paper about it not so long ago, but it's very tempting to say, of course you start with the use case. Come on, we start with the business challenges. We articulate the use cases, and let me see what data we need and what analytics we need to drive it. And that's very good, because without the use case, there's nothing. But you're missing out a little bit on the serendipity of it, the accidental running into combinations of data and algorithms that you didn't anticipate from a use case, but suddenly gives you this moment of epiphany, this breakthrough moment. Oh, wow. Here's an insight that I never saw that coming. I didn't create a use case or a requirement for it, but it just struck me, right? And I could build on top of it. Now, only that is also a bad thing. Any data scientist would be able to tell you, but the very politically correct, but also right answer is you should do both in a proper combination.
I'm fully aligned with Ron here. Obviously, unhindered discovery is really, really important. But there's also one more aspect to the data. Things like sensor data or activity data, they're temporal. As in, if you don't capture them today, they'll be deleted tomorrow. Think about your email retention policy. You may be keeping only 1 year going back of your email in your company. If you were to extract insights from that, you are every minute losing the emails that you were exchanging with your clients a year ago. So if you just start with the use case and look for data set, you might have missed the data set. It already disappeared. So it all goes back also to the aspect of storage is cheap today with the cloud and everything else. You should always start with storing as much of clean and reliable data as possible as early on, and then use both use case driven, but also discovery driven approach to find insights in that data at a later point. Because finding, if you capture the data and then you need to delete it, that's reversible. You can delete the data. If you didn't capture the data, but then you need the data, that's irreversible. So always go for reversible stuff.
Interesting. So Oleg and Ron, we're coming up close to top of the hour. If you got like half a minute each to kind of summarize the conversation from your point of view, what would that sound like? So Ron, maybe you go first.
Data is a crucial asset, and there's no denial there. We see it's pivotal to many of the challenges that we're currently addressing, whether we're trying simply to survive or sustain our business, or whether we're trying to thrive in a more virtual context, or even if we're envisioning our renaissance, right? Our rising from the ashes after this crisis. Data is absolutely crucial to it. Then again, I think the main message was we could thrive on data by relying more on algorithms and data from all sorts of different sources. And on the other hand, we need to maintain in these difficult times both the ethical and also emotional dimensions of it.
Super clear. And Oleg?
Perfect. So we are in very uncertain times, and in these uncertain times, data is what gives us confidence, certainty, and predictability. And so businesses should be relying more and more on the data sets that they have at hand today to make the right decisions when they have to move fast. And one of those data types, obviously, that People AI is focused on is activity data, which is a new data set that everybody has. Everybody has their mailboxes, everybody has their calendars, their Zoom records, etc. We're sitting on a trove of extremely valuable data that describes how we've been successful before and how we've failed before. So you can learn from it and be more successful. Yet the data is continuously disappearing if you're not capturing it today. Every minute you're losing potential insights. And so businesses should take a step back and understand that the faster you start capturing the data and then the faster you start deriving insights out of it, is the faster you're going to become much more efficient and effective and productive at what you do today, which is what we need in these difficult times.
Right. Thank you.
Take this time to become more effective.
Yeah, for sure. Fully agree. Oleg and Ron, thank you so much for joining us today in this Go Live episode. I certainly learned a lot from the conversation. Always interesting to engage with you. And also to you as an attendee who have been listening in and submitting questions also. Thank you for attending today, this Go Live session. Be sure to register for the next Go Live at capgemini.com/go-live. We wish you all the best, and most importantly, stay safe, you and your families. Thank you.